Welcome back, everyone, to Lost Shrine. Today, I'm bringing you 7 true, haunting park ranger reports straight from the Appalachian Mountains. Stories that mix the raw wilderness with encounters so unsettling, they'll stick with you long after the screen goes dark. These aren't just campfire tales. They're real experiences filed by people who patrol these forests every day. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and share this with anyone who loves the eerie and unexplained. And don't forget to comment below. I want to know where you're watching from. All right, let's get into it. I was only 2 weeks into my assignment at Bear Ridge when I learned why no ranger volunteered for the night shift. I told myself it was just superstition, a story passed down to spook rookies like me. But by the end of that shift, I understood why the veteran rangers never looked at the woods after sunset. Daytime felt like any other state forest. Sunlight filtering through oak leaves, campers laughing near fire pits, kids roasting marshmallows and telling harmless ghost stories they didn't believe in. I liked those hours. I liked helping families find the scenic overlook, chatting with hikers about what they'd seen on the trails, and breathing in the clean mountain air. But when night came, it was different. Not just darker, different. The forest didn't breathe the same way. The wind went quiet, like everything was listening. The stars felt too far away. The trees became walls instead of shelter. And even though I knew the trails like the back of my hand, I never felt certain of where I was anymore. Night patrol was supposed to be simple. Sit in the station, answer radio calls, do a quick drive if someone reported movement in the restricted zones. My supervisor, Harris, walked me through the whole procedure on my first night, emphasizing one rule more than anything else. Don't chase noises, he said. If something doesn't call for help by name, ignore it. I laughed at the time, thinking he meant wild animals. He didn't laugh with me. That night, the night everything changed, started the same as any other. I logged check-ins every hour, sipped bitter instant coffee, watched tiny dots of firelight flicker from distant campsites. The clock crawled. Midnight came and passed. At 1:18 a.m., I stood to stretch, listening to the soft hum of the radio. Then I heard it. A long, high whistle drifting between the trees. Too clean to be wind, too steady to be some bird. It rose sharp, held for several seconds, and cut off unnaturally fast. Like someone waiting for a response. I grabbed the radio. "Control, this is Station B. Did anyone else hear that whistle?" Nothing. Just static. I tried again. "Control, respond." Still nothing. I stared at the wall-mounted map of Bear Ridge, a maze of valleys and hollow trails that used to connect to logging camps decades ago. One thin line curved into the heart of the forest, where no official trails remained. The old fire road. The whistle came again. Closer. I should have ignored it. I should have remembered Harris's warning. But something in that sound, not panic, not distress, intention, grabbed me by the nerve. Against every instinct, I took the flashlight and stepped outside. The station door shut behind me with a soft thud, muffling the safe hum of electricity. Out here, the world was pitch black except for the narrow beam of my light slicing through it. The air smelled damp and cold, like overturned earth. The trees towered above, silhouettes with tangled branches reaching like fingers toward the sky. I followed the whistle. It always sounded just far enough away to keep me moving, never close enough to find. I called out a couple of times, my voice swallowed by the woods. Everything else was silent. No crickets, no owls, just darkness and my breathing, louder than it should have been. 10 minutes in, the ground became uneven under my boots, roots twisting like veins under the soil. I realized I'd wandered deeper than any marked trail allowed. My GPS tracker blinked weakly. No signal. I stopped, chest tight. The whistle answered. Nearer now. Too near. I aimed my flashlight ahead. The old fire road. I'd only seen it on old maps. A flattened path where the logging trucks once ran. It was supposed to be completely overgrown by now, but the trees here looked like they had been forced back, as if someone still used this path. My beam skimmed over splintered tree trunks cut low, freshly cut, and a ring-shaped depression in the dirt, like tires had passed not long ago. The woods around me felt wrong, slouched, expectant. The whistle sounded again, but this time it wasn't ahead of me. It was to my left. I swung the light toward the brush and froze. Something pale stood between the trees. A figure, a person maybe, but too still, too rigid. Skin the color of candle wax. Clothes, if they were clothes, torn into strips that hung like they'd rotted on the body. The face was lost in shadow, but I could feel it staring. I raised the radio. Station B, there's someone out here. I need backup. My voice trembled, but I kept it steady enough to hope. Static replied. Long, unbroken static. I lowered the radio. The figure was gone. Branches snapped behind me. Quick, light footsteps, and then that whistle. Not distant, not directional. Right behind my ear. I didn't turn. I ran. Branches whipped my arms. Roots clawed at my boots. I didn't care. I just ran until my lungs burned and my legs begged me to stop. When the trees finally thinned, the station porch light shined like salvation. I burst through the door, slammed it behind me and locked it. Inside, everything looked normal. The radio hummed like it had never stopped working. My coffee sat where I left it, still warm. But the clock read 2:03 a.m., 45 minutes. Gone. I had no memory of half of it. My logbook showed my last mark at 1 a.m. Nothing after. I picked up the radio mic, hesitated, then pressed call again. Control, do you copy? A voice crackled through. Harris. Calm, tired, almost annoyed. Station B, this is Control. Everything all right? I nearly broke down from relief. Yes, I heard something. Someone in the woods. Look, we need to check. No, he interrupted sharply. Tone like a slammed door. You're inside now. Don't go back out. Harris, I saw. You didn't see anything. His voice wasn't angry. It was pleading. And if you hear the whistle again, do not answer it. Then he ended the transmission. I barely slept that morning. Every sound outside, creaking wood, settling wind, felt like a whistle waiting to start again. When the sun finally rose, I convinced myself I'd imagined it, that adrenaline had twisted shadows into monsters. But daylight didn't erase what I remembered. And what I'd seen wasn't a trick of the dark. I reported everything I could that morning. The logs still showed no calls from 1-2 a.m. The GPS history showed no movement off-site. The supervisors chalked it up to stress, isolation, adjusting to the night shift. Ranger Cole, a veteran I'd rarely seen, pulled me aside afterward. A man with deep lines under his eyes, like sleep had abandoned him years ago. You heard the whistle, huh? He asked quietly. My silence was all the answer he needed. They don't want help, he said, staring out toward the tree line. They want company. He told me that decades ago, when Bear Ridge was still being logged, families lived deep in the woods, off-grid, untracked, forgotten. When the logging jobs vanished and roads shut down, some left, some didn't. Those who remained weren't prepared for winter storms that buried their cabins and cut them off. Rescuers tried to find them the next spring, but when they did, some were too far gone. Cole said the forest takes care of its own, that once someone disappears long enough, they stop being a missing person and become something else entirely. They use that whistle to draw you in, he said. It's how they used to signal each other. Now, they use it to see who's willing to follow. His eyes met mine, heavy with a warning I wish I hadn't earned. Don't chase sounds that don't belong. After that talk, I tried to avoid the night shift, begged for daytime patrols, volunteered for campground cleanup, anything. But we were short-staffed, and eventually I was back behind that glass window staring into the black tree line again. The first few nights were quiet, then the whistle returned. Farther this time, testing me. Long and slow, like a patient breath relearning its shape. I gripped the arms of my chair until my knuckles bruised. I didn't answer it. I didn't move. I kept the lights on and my eyes away from the windows. 30 minutes passed, then another whistle. Closer. I closed my eyes. Eventually, dawn arrived. There were footprints in the dew outside the station. Bare, narrow prints circling the door, like someone had paced for hours, waiting for me to step outside. It's been a month since that first night. Now, when the darkness settles, I hear them whistle from somewhere just beyond the tree line. Some nights, there are two whistles, one long, one short, like a call and response. Other nights, it's just one note, held until I feel tears sting my eyes. I make my logs. I drink my coffee. I pretend I'm not listening, but I've started noticing something else. A feeling, faint but growing. Like the forest is learning my schedule, like the whistle knows my name. And sometimes, when the wind dies, when the world holds its breath and the radio goes still, I swear I feel someone standing just behind me, waiting for me to turn around. I haven't yet, but I don't think I'll be able to resist forever. I was only 2 months into the job when they put me on the graveyard shift. The night air keeps you sharp, the older rangers joked, but really it was because I was new, the one who couldn't complain yet. Our station sat on the edge of a forest so thick the trees felt like walls, and somewhere deep inside those woods, older than our maps, were 9 abandoned ranger cabins. They were remnants from a time when this region was a true frontier, when people disappeared and nobody asked why. They told me most of the cabins were swallowed by the woods decades ago. Roots cracked the floors, moss ate the roofs, and the forest reclaimed the land faster than anyone could maintain it. They were condemned, off limits, just there to rot and be forgotten. Around midnight, the motion alert beeped at the desk. A little red light blinked on the panel. Cabin 6. I glanced at the logs. Nobody had been near that site in years. It was technically within our jurisdiction, but only as a place we told hikers not to go. Probably a bear, I thought. They rummage everywhere this time of year. The wind outside sounded rough, scraping against the building like something with claws. My truck headlights cut through the trees in stiff beams as I drove deeper down the narrow service road. The forest pressed close on both sides, branches clawing the windows, fog pooling low over the ground like the earth was breathing. Cabin 6 emerged from the darkness the way a nightmare follows you into waking. Slow, inevitable, wrong. A squat, rotting shape barely visible beneath the weight of vines and time. The wooden boards were so warped that I wondered how the structure even stood at all. But my truck hit the brakes hard when I saw the impossible. A warm yellow light glowed through the cracks around the door. I sat there with the engine idling, staring. There was no electricity connected to these cabins. The lines had been cut ages ago. Even if a trespasser had hiked out here, there was no way they'd get the lights working. Yet there it was. A steady, inviting glow, just bright enough to say, "Someone's inside." I radioed the station, keeping my voice calm even though my heart was hammering. "This is Ranger Webb. I've got active lights in cabin 6. Was there maintenance scheduled out here?" Static crawled over the speaker. Then a reply. The supervisor's voice, tight, uncertain. Cabin 6 has been condemned since before any of us worked here. Yeah, I know, but the lights... Do not open that door. The words landed hard. Not a suggestion, a command. Station, could you clarify? If there's someone trapped, Webb, do not approach and do not open the door. Then silence. No backup. No explanation. Just a warning. I should have listened, but I was new. And you don't leave some poor hiker locked in a condemned shack to die in the dark. So I stepped out of the truck, flashlight in one hand, radio in the other. Every step toward that cabin felt heavier than the last. The air itself seemed to resist me, thick and still, as if the forest was holding its breath. I swept my light along the exterior. Long boards across all the windows, nailed tight, aged with weather. The door was chained from the outside, a thick padlock anchoring it shut. Nobody had gone in or out without cutting it. And the chain, it was intact. Yet the light seeped out from every uneven gap between wood and door frame. Something cast shadows inside. Movement, maybe. Someone standing there, waiting. I knocked once. The light died instantly, not dimmed. Snapped off, like someone hit a switch. A silence fell so deep it made my ears ring. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Shuffling right up to the door. I froze, the beam of my flashlight trembling against the wood. The footsteps stopped just inches from me. A barrier of old timber, the only thing separating us. And then, breathing. Not loud, just the unmistakable sound of another living thing drawing air on the other side. Long inhales, quicker exhales, like it was excited or hungry. Hello? My voice shook, pathetic. Are you hurt? Can you speak? No answer. Only the soft tap of fingernails dragging down the inside of the door. I swallowed hard. My rational brain was scrambling, trying to find a normal explanation. Squatters, some crazy hermit, a prank by the older rangers. But my instincts, the old human-animal ones, screamed run. The chain rattled. Just once. A quiet, metallic tremor, but violent enough to shake dust from the wood. Whatever was inside, it wanted out. I backed up one slow step, then another. My flashlight caught the padlock, twitching, not from wind, not from my movement, something pulling from the other side. I whispered into the radio. Station. Someone's inside. They're trying to... The radio emitted a shriek of static so loud I flinched. Voices tangled inside it, distant, overlapping, like multiple people whispering at once, all begging, "Don't let it out." I dropped the radio, heart punching my ribs. The chain strained, links vibrating like they might snap. The door bulged outward, dust kicking up around the frame. I turned and walked back to the truck, refusing to break eye contact from the cabin. My body moved on instinct. The part of me that knew this place was wrong, that whatever was sealed inside had been put there for a reason. The woods were silent. Too silent. No wind. No insects. No distant trees creaking. Just that cabin breathing behind me. And then, just as I reached my truck door, that noise. A slow, dragging sweep. Nails or knuckles sliding across the inside of the wall, trailing from one corner of the cabin to the other, followed by something else. A faint voice. A whisper. It sounded like a child. "Stay. Please." I almost turned around. Almost. But fear turned me into a coward. Or maybe it saved me. I climbed into the truck, slammed the door, and only when I was rolling backward did I finally look away. The forest swallowed the cabin quickly. The light never returned. When I got back, nobody asked questions. Nobody wrote a report. They looked at me like they already knew what I'd seen. Like every ranger eventually has one cabin they never talk about. But I asked anyway. Over coffee, in quiet moments, on patrol with the older guys. "What's in cabin 6? Nobody gave a straight answer. One man just said, the people who built this station weren't just protecting the forest, they were locking something inside it. Another said the cabin had been sealed since before he was born. A third refused to speak at all, just shook his head and walked away. I didn't go near those woods again at night, not for a long time, but that didn't matter, because whatever was in cabin 6, it followed me home anyway. At first it was sounds, little creaks in the hallway late at night, like footsteps trying to match mine. Then shadows, sliding under the door when I turned out the lights. A hint of stale cabin air creeping into my bedroom. I told myself it was stress, night shift paranoia. Until the night I woke up at 3:14 a.m., heart pounding, sweat cold, because the light under my bedroom door suddenly flicked off. Dead black. I heard someone get up from the floor. Slow, heavy, bare feet dragging, and then 3 knocks on the other side of the door, just like I had knocked on cabin 6. I held my breath, too scared to move, too scared to cry out. The shadow beneath the door stretched. It waited, listening. Then came the laugh. A small, broken, breathy laugh. Like a sick child, finally happy someone found them. Open. The voice was right against the wood. I stayed perfectly still until the morning sun finally broke through my window. Only when the birds began singing again did the presence retreat, slipping away like it never existed. But some nights, especially when the forest wind howls through town, a little light flickers under the door again. Yellow, warm, inviting. And I hear those same slow footsteps cross the floor toward me, wherever I am. Like cabin 6 never actually needed me to open its door. It just needed me to knock back. I still wake up at 3:17 a.m. to the sound of that radio. Not the radio I keep on my nightstand now. That one's never been turned on again. But the crackle of it in my memory, a frequency I can't shake. That night changed me. And I think whatever was calling from under that mud is still changing me. I'd been working the overnight shift for the county search and rescue station for 3 years by then. Winter in the Appalachians is its own kind of loneliness. Frozen pines, coyotes crying like grief buried deep, fog draped over the valleys like a curtain between worlds. And inside that tiny ranger cabin, it was just me, my thermos, and a radio older than I was. The kind with a dial you have to twist 3 times before the static settles into a station. We didn't get many calls after midnight. Most hikers had more sense than to wander after dark this time of year. I had the kettle going, the coffee stale enough to taste like burnt leaves. I was fighting the kind of exhaustion where you blink, and a minute disappears. I kept staring at the window, waiting for the first hints of dawn to wash out the night. My eyelids drooped. The radio hissed quietly in the background. Then the static sharpened. Not louder, just suddenly aware like it had been sleeping and something shook it awake. "Help!" I jerked upright, my mug clattering against the wooden table. At first I thought I'd imagined it. Old radios sing all kinds of strange songs when the air is cold and damp. But then, "Please, I'm still here." It sounded like a young man, weak, afraid. Each word clipped, swallowed by static. I snatched the receiver. "This is Search and Rescue Station 12. Identify and state your location." Silence. Just a slow, broken crackle like someone breathing through gravel. Then again, clearer. "Trail. 19. Help." My stomach twisted. Trail 19 had been closed for almost a year, ever since the landslide. Early winter, freeze-thaw cycle, unstable rock. 2 hikers from Ohio got caught in it. A couple. We spent a week digging through mud and boulders until the state called off the search. Terrain too dangerous, they said. Ground still shifting. Families had to accept what no one wanted to say out loud. We never found bodies. I squeezed the transmitter. If you can hear me, keep talking. I'm coming. No response, but a soft whimper pushed through the static. Human or something very close to it. Protocol said I should call the sheriff, wait for backup. But something deep in my chest, guilt maybe, shoved me out the door with my pack and radio before I could think twice. Fog hugged the ground thick as wool. I flicked on my headlamp, but the beam seemed to drown in the white. My boots vanished beneath it, like I was walking through clouds. The forest felt wrong. Quiet in a way that wasn't peaceful. Like all the animals were pressed against the trees holding their breath. Every minute or so, the voice returned. Faint, muffled, like someone hugging the microphone against their chest while struggling to breathe. Cold. Don't leave me. Trail 19 sign was hidden behind hazard tape, drooping like wilted vines. I stepped over it, crunching into snow-crusted earth. My pulse drummed in my ears. The deeper I went, the more the forest seemed to lean in, branches clutching overhead as if they wanted to seal me inside. As I approached the landslide clearing, I slowed. The trees opened into a scarred section of hillside. Earth spilled outward like a frozen wave. A graveyard of broken stone. I stopped at the edge and scanned with my light. No footprints, no torn clothing, no exposed cavities in the mud. Just hardened dirt and rock, settled now into a dead thing. I pressed the transmitter. I'm at Trail 19. Say something so I can locate you. Static spat. Then a whisper, close enough it didn't sound like it came through the radio at all. Right here. I froze. It came from below me. Slowly, I lowered the headlamp beam to my boots. Mud, cracked and dry. Nothing else. But the voice again. Why didn't you come sooner? The ground pulsed. Not quite a tremor, more like muscles shifting under skin. A bulge rose, then fell. I stumbled backward, heart clawing at my throat. Hold on, I yelled, trying to sound in control. I'll get more help. Just... The radio blared suddenly. A shriek of distortion and laughter tangled together. The sound stabbed my eardrums. I dropped the device and clutched my head, stumbling to my knees. When the noise cut out, the silence after was worse. Heavy, expectant. I picked up the radio with trembling hands. Listen, I said, voice breaking. I'm sorry. We tried. We really did. Something scraped beneath the earth. Long, slow drags. Fingernails on metal. Bones shifting. Then a scream tore through the speaker. Not human anymore, or maybe too human. The agony of lungs that haven't breathed in months, of mouths packed with soil. It echoed so loud through the valley I thought the trees might split. I ran. Branches snagged me like claws, ripping my sleeves, biting my skin. The radio kept shrieking even after I dropped it, echoing across rock and bark and bone. My legs burned, but I didn't dare look back. The fog rolled after me, like it wanted me gone, ushering me out of that cursed ground. By the time the station came into view, dawn's first light was smearing gray across the world. I slammed the door shut behind me, chest heaving. The radio was still on the forest floor somewhere, but the emergency channel inside the cabin flickered alive. Dig. Please. We're still here. Not one voice anymore. Two. Male and female overlapping, broken by static and choking, like they were still buried. And worst, their tone wasn't begging anymore. It was angry. You left us. I grabbed the cord and ripped the radio from the wall. The wires snapped and sparks spat, but the voices didn't stop. They bled from the speakerless guts of the machine, plead turning to blame, blame turning to something hollow and hungry. I smashed it against the floor until plastic shattered and metal bent. Finally, the noise died. I sank down beside the wreckage and sat there until noon sunlight poured through the windows. For a few hours, I convinced myself exhaustion had played tricks on me. That grief echoes in strange ways, that radios misfire when weather interferes, that ground can shift from frost heave, not hands. But I couldn't shake the sound of dirt grinding beneath me. I filed a report anyway. The sheriff skimmed it, squinted, and looked at me like I was the next classification over from delusional. Probably stray interference, he said. Old equipment does that, and you need a break. He gave me 2 weeks mandatory rest. I didn't sleep once. The station kept the radios, replaced them later with digital ones. Better signal, no ghost frequencies. That's what they said. But I know the truth. They wanted to bury what we all already decided to leave buried. Weeks passed, then months, but some nights, the cold ones when fog smothers the ridge, my new radio on the nightstand flickers to life. Just a little crackle at first. Then faint breaths, dirt-packed, muffled breaths. Then, "Why didn't you come sooner?" I throw a blanket over it, push it into a drawer, unplug it from the wall. Doesn't matter, it doesn't need power anymore. I tell myself they're gone. I tell myself I couldn't have dug through that stone alone. I tell myself I was never meant to be a savior, just somebody who listens, waits, and hopes. But their voices know better. They remind me that dying isn't the cruel part. Waiting is. Waiting in the dark, under the earth, every second believing rescue is coming, until breath stops, bones freeze, and hope rots into hate. Now, whenever winter closes in, the fog thickens and the world goes quiet, I hear them whispering through static. Dig. The cables on that nightstand radio twitch sometimes, pulled taut like something underground is tugging them gently, testing the strength. I keep telling myself I can't help them, but I think someday they're going to help themselves. And when they do, they'll come looking for the one person who should have been there, the one who heard them calling. I've been a ranger on this stretch of mountain highway for 12 years now. Long enough that the trees feel like co-workers, and the bears feel more familiar than my own neighbors. There's a rhythm out here, a routine the forest hums under its breath. You learn it, you respect it, and you don't step out of tune. Because when you do, that's when the mountains remind you who they belong to. But what happened near mile marker 3? I don't think that belonged to any forest I know. It was early, close to sunrise. Fog thick as wool, hanging low around the branches and hugging the ground so tight that the world felt like it was underwater. I was dead tired after a long night of clearing debris from the road. A storm had pushed through the evening before, snapping limbs and scattering rocks halfway across the pass. I'd been driving that same 2-mile stretch back and forth for hours, making sure nothing big enough to kill a driver was left lying around. I was heading back toward the ranger station just a 1/4 mile out from marker 3, when my headlights caught something, a gentle curve of shape off the road, just standing there in the fog. At first glance, I thought it was a deer. We see them all the time at dawn. They stand still, hoping the car passes without noticing them. But something wasn't right. It stood too straight, too tall, not the soft hunch of a whitetail. It was upright, like a person. Its legs. I squinted. They were long and strangely proportioned, knees too high, the stance too narrow. The body looked slender but towering, like someone stretched a man too far and stuck antlers on his head as an afterthought. I rolled to a slow stop, maybe 30 feet away, tilting my head to get a better look through the streaked windshield. My brain was trying to force it into a shape that made sense. A trick of the fog, maybe. Shadows. But the antlers were bright, unnaturally bright. A bone white that seemed to glow against the graying mist. They twisted in directions antlers shouldn't twist, branches curling upward like skeletal fingers. It didn't move, didn't flick its ears, shift its weight, breathe heavy like deer normally do when they spot headlights. It just stood there, staring into the center of the road, unmoving. I pulled over. I don't know why. Professional curiosity, habit, stupidity. The moment I shifted into park, the creature stirred. Slow, deliberate. Its head pivoted toward me with mechanical precision. And when I say head, God, the face. It wasn't shaped like a deer's. Too long, too narrow. The skin looked stretched like someone had pulled a hide over a skull that was the wrong shape. The nose didn't sit right, the mouth set too low, and where eyes should have been, I didn't see anything but dark hollows. No reflection of my headlights, just pits. The rational part of my mind kept insisting, maybe it's injured, maybe it's diseased. I'd seen some messed up wildlife before. Mange, broken legs, malformed antlers. But this wasn't that. Everything about it screamed wrong. Then it stepped toward me, and the antlers, I remember hearing the scraping sound, bone dragging against wet branches overhead, except it wasn't bone. As it moved, I noticed they weren't anchored into the skull like normal antlers. They seemed to push out from the skin itself, like something growing through flesh, tearing its way out. Parts of the skin around them were dark and wet, like it had been bleeding. I froze. My heart punched the inside of my chest so hard, I thought it would bruise. The engine sputtered and died. Not a stall, like something snuffed the battery dry. The dash lights went black. The air in the truck instantly felt wrong, like it thickened, turned metallic. Every instinct I had, survival hardwired into the spine, screamed to run. But my legs wouldn't move. My fingers stayed clamped around the steering wheel even though there was nothing useful about holding on to it. Everything outside the truck had gone silent. The birds, the wind, even the drip of water from the branches. It was as if the world itself held its breath. The creature lowered its head, a jerky motion, too precise to belong to anything natural, and sniffed the air. Long, deep inhales that made the skin along its ribs expand and tighten like leather, pulling over wire. It angled its torso toward me, searching. I swear I felt it smell me. My lungs burned. I didn't realize I was holding my breath. I risked the smallest inhale and the air tasted like copper, like biting a penny. My ears rang. A cold pressure wrapped around my skull like the air wanted to squeeze the thoughts right out of me. Then, the faintest tremble of the ground. Far off, but growing. A rumble. Headlights glimmered in the distant fog. A logging truck barreling around the bend. The creature stiffened. Its neck twitched, jerking back toward the woods. Then without a single rustle of leaves, without any noise at all, it was gone. 1 second it was staring me down. The next, it was swallowed by the trees. Not even branches shook where it had disappeared. The silence remained for one last eerie beat, like the forest hadn't caught up to reality yet. Then sound rushed back. Wind, birds, the drip of water. My truck lights flickered alive, radio crackling static, engine trembling like nothing had happened. The logging truck blasted past, horn blaring, driver flashing me a look like I needed to get out of the ditch and drive home. I just stared after him, sweat cold against my back. I waited until my hand stopped shaking enough to turn the ignition. Back at the station, I sat for a long time in the break room, staring at my coffee but not drinking it. When another ranger, Jim, clocked in at 7, he found me still clutching that mug. "You look like you saw a ghost," he said, half joking. I tried to describe it, as carefully and calmly as I could. Jim didn't laugh. He didn't even smile. He just listened, his eyes fixed on mine, jaw tightening a little more with every detail. When I finished, he said one thing: stay away from mile 3 for a while. That was it. He left, like the conversation never happened. Over the months that followed, a few hunters trudged through my door looking pale as snow and twice as shaky. They told stories that sounded too much like mine. Eyes watching from tree lines. Something tall, wrong-shaped, silent in the brush. One guy swore he saw antlers move in the dark, but nothing underneath them. Another heard sniffing behind his blind, but when he turned, all he saw were prints that looked like hooves and feet combined. I stopped walking alone after that. One evening, I tried to bring it up again. Not to hunters, but to Jim. He's been a ranger even longer than me. Knows these mountains like he built them himself. I asked him what he really thought I'd seen. He wouldn't answer, wouldn't look me in the eye. He just muttered, "I've been here a long time. Long enough to know some things out there don't care if we understand them." I asked if anyone else had seen something like it. He paused, too long, and nodded slowly. "Once," he said. "Same spot." Then he stood up, walked outside, and locked the door behind him. Conversation over. Now, when I take new recruits out on patrol, I tell them something Jim told me years ago, long before any of this. Keep your lights pointed forward, don't stop for shadows, and if something wants to be seen, don't be the one who sees it. I pretend it's just old ranger wisdom, but I mean every word. The fog has been thicker lately around mile marker 3. Animals avoid the shoulders there. Even the crows don't land near that bend anymore. Some days I drive past, eyes straight, pulse tight, pretending I don't want to look. Other days, I catch myself slowing down without meaning to. Humming engine, held breath, like part of me expects it standing there again. Watching, waiting. Because whatever that thing was, it wasn't a deer, and it remembers who drives that road. It isn't afraid of us. It knows we patrol here, and I think, one day, it'll be waiting when I'm alone again. No logging truck to save me, no engine to fail. Just me, and the silence, and the breathing in the fog. I used to believe the forest was honest, harsh, unpredictable, sometimes cruel, but honest. Trails stayed put. Landmarks didn't lie. If you knew the woods, they'd respect you. I spent 8 years as a ranger out here in the South Loop, and I thought I understood the rhythm of these mountains better than I understood people. But I was wrong. There's something living in this place that knows us too well, something that prefers when we trust it. Most of the missing hiker cases were forgettable at first. Couples who wandered too far from camp, novice hikers who thought every direction was probably right. When we'd find them, they were usually dazed, dehydrated, embarrassed. They always said a similar thing, like they had practiced it before we arrived. The trail markers changed. They pointed the wrong way. We'd chalk the confusion up to panic, darkness, or just plain stupidity. The official report always blamed user error. But as the years passed, those stories multiplied, and they got stranger. The hikers who came back weren't just lost. They were rattled, hollow-eyed. Sometimes they refused to walk near any trail sign again. One woman screamed at us when she saw a painted arrow nailed to a tree and demanded we tear it down. Another shivered through her statement, repeatedly whispering, "Don't follow them, don't follow them." My supervisor dismissed the idea of a pattern. "The woods play tricks," he'd say. "The human brain plays more." Easy enough to believe, until the night I saw the trick happen with my own 2 eyes. It was late last month. I was doing a solo inspection of the South Loop because some out-of-towners had reported hearing screams in the ravine past mile marker 9. Elk during rut can sound like dying men, so I assumed that was all they'd heard. Still, protocol sent me out for a quick check. The evening air was already sinking into a cold bite as the sun bled into dark. Shadows stretched long between the pines. I only planned to walk the trail for 30 minutes before turning back. But the deeper I went, the more I felt that familiar unease. Like the woods were listening. My flashlight scanned the path ahead, catching white paint on rough wood. A trail marker sign nailed to a post. Nothing odd. The arrow pointed left toward the loop's bend, but then it moved. Slow, creaking, like someone was turning it from behind the post, wood against wood, grinding with intention. I froze, breath held high in my chest. The arrow swung away from the main trail until it pointed into a narrow gap of brush. A game path I'd never seen before. There was no wind. The air was completely still. I stepped closer, searching for wire or fishing line, some stupid prank. But the sign was untouched, weathered, scratched by years of use. My nerves told me to ignore it, to keep walking the true trail. But curiosity is the hook that gets you killed in the woods. I thought maybe I could find the mechanism. Maybe I'd solve the mystery all those lost hikers babbled about. So I stepped off trail. The ground felt wrong beneath my boots, soft in strange places, knobby in others, like roots shifting under the soil. Within minutes, the forest swallowed the trail behind me, replaced by something deeper and darker. The air smelled stale, like a basement sealed too long. My own footsteps sounded too loud, and every time I paused, expecting to hear the usual forest life. Crickets, distant owls, wind brushing leaves. I heard nothing. Absolutely nothing. After 5, maybe 10 minutes, more signs appeared ahead. Dozens of them. They were hammered to trees, lashed to rocks, jammed into the dirt like gravestones. Some looked brand new, fresh wood, clean paint. Others were gray and splintered, half-rotted, arrows carved by hand. But every single one pointed directly inward, guiding me deeper into a place that didn't seem to end. I should have turned back then. Any sane person would have. But the silence made thinking foggy. The path, if you could call it that, felt like it was gently downhill, drawing me in like water flowing through a funnel. The deeper I went, the more the forest seemed to close around me. Branches leaned together overhead like they didn't want the moonlight to tell me what waited ahead. At some point, I noticed figures between the trees. Not clearly, just shapes that seemed too tall, too still to be bushes. When I squinted, they disappeared into the dark. I told myself I was imagining things. I tried to call out, "Hello?" But my voice sounded swallowed, like the air didn't want noise in it. Then the footsteps started. Not one set, several, all around. Dry brush snapping under hurried weight, not the cautious stepping of animals, but a fast, reckless sprint. Human. They were running toward me. I didn't wait to see who or what they were. I turned and ran. Branches whipped my face, roots tried to trip me, and the arrows seemed to guide the pursuit. Not my escape. Behind me, the impact of feet chasing me was growing louder, closing in. I didn't dare look back. The dark behind me felt thick and angry, like it wanted to swallow me whole. I don't remember choosing my direction. I just remember bursting through a wall of undergrowth and slamming down onto the real trail so hard. My flashlight flew from my hands. It rolled, spinning its beam wildly over familiar earth and familiar markers, the legitimate white blazes painted on trees. I scrambled for it, gasping, tearing leaves from my hair. The footsteps had stopped the instant I crossed that invisible boundary. When I looked back into the woods where I'd just fled, everything was still, silent, just trees and brush. The signs, dozens of them, were gone. Except one. That first sign, the one that turned on its own, stood rigid and unmoving again, its arrow now pointed, properly back to the loop, as if nothing had ever happened, as if I had imagined the whole impossible thing. I didn't log it. I didn't radio it in. I walked fast, maybe even ran, all the way back to my truck. My hands shook on the steering wheel the whole ride home. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back in that dead forest, seeing those shapes lining the trees, hearing the footsteps charging at me. A week later, a hiker vanished, a father of 3 from Knoxville. He'd been alone. He knew the area. He'd signed in at the ranger station and never signed out. Search and rescue spent 3 days combing every valley, ridge, stream, and rock outcrop. When they finally found him, if found is the right word, he was sitting at the edge of the true trail, knees pulled to his chest, like a child who'd been left outside too long. He had no memory of the missing time. He just kept repeating one sentence: "They didn't want me. Not yet." When they asked who they were, he looked straight past the medic treating him and stared into the woods. His clothes were torn, his boots were soaking wet, and his legs were bruised in long, finger-shaped marks, as if someone had dragged him through uneven ground. When they tried to lift him to take him to the hospital, he screamed, bloody murder, demanding not to be moved off that exact spot. He begged us to leave the signs alone. "Please," he whimpered. "If they point away, just let them." He refused medical transport for an hour before he finally passed out. Only then did they carry him away. I tried, God knows I tried, to forget what happened to me, to pretend it was just a trick of the mind. Sleep deprivation, a long shift, but what happened to that hiker felt like confirmation. The signs choose, they lure, and sometimes they give a person back. Sometimes. Now, every time I walk the South Loop, I find fresh gouges in the posts, new carvings, arrows that weren't there days before. Some mornings after a storm, signs stand facing different directions than they had the night before, even though no one filed a maintenance request. The forest rearranges itself, slowly, patiently. Whenever I pass those markers, I keep my eyes straight ahead and pretend I don't see them watching me. Pretend I can't hear them creaking in the stillness, like they're eager to spin again. I've stopped logging missing hikers. What would the report even say? Trail signs are hunting. The woods want new paths. Something in the dark wants us to follow. I don't touch the markers anymore, and I warn every hiker the same way. If the signs point somewhere new, don't follow them. Because one night your curiosity might lead you deeper than you can return, to a place where the forest is quiet, the air is wrong, and footsteps rush in from every direction, excited to greet you. Most hikers come back, confused. Some come back broken, and a few, the ones who listen too closely to the woods, never come back at all. The trail doesn't lose people, it collects them. I remember the first time I saw it, like it just happened yesterday, even though I've tried to scrub it from my mind countless times. The visitor center sat at the edge of the ridge, right where the forest thins and the mountains drop into a valley so deep it swallows sound. I'd been hired as the overnight security guard for the summer, mostly to keep an eye on vandals or hikers who didn't respect the trails. Everyone warned me about the cameras before I started. Old, they said. Glitchy, always catching dust. You'll see shadows that aren't there. I laughed it off, but something in their eyes told me they weren't joking. Still, I never expected to meet whatever that shadow was. It was just past 2 in the morning, dead in the middle of July, when the monitor flickered. I was sipping lukewarm coffee, trying to stay awake, when the screen went fuzzy, then sharp again. And there it was. Not a trick of the lens, not a smear of dust like the others claimed. It was a black silhouette, tall, unnervingly human in shape, standing smack in the center of the lobby. I froze because it didn't move like a person, didn't breathe, didn't even cast a shadow. It just existed. It absorbed the light, the kind of dark that feels heavy, like stepping into water you can't see through. My heart started hammering, but the motion alarm never tripped. The doors never opened. It didn't need to. It was just there. I dropped the coffee, shoved the chair back, and sprinted down the hallway toward the lobby, flashlight in hand. My shoes squeaked against the linoleum, echoing down the empty corridor. When I burst in, the lobby was exactly what it always was. Tables lined up, brochures scattered across the counter, vending machines humming quietly. Empty. Nothing stirred. And yet, the air had shifted. I could feel it in my lungs, in the back of my throat, a coldness that made me shiver even under the fluorescent lights. Then it hit me. The temperature dropped so fast it burned. My breath turned to mist in the beam of my flashlight, and I swear the radio at the front desk crackled alive like someone exhaling heavily right behind me. Short, slow breaths, labored, wet. My first instinct was to turn around, to face it, but something in my gut told me not to. I kept my eyes on the lobby. Slowly, I stepped backward until my heels hit the hallway wall. Then I ran. The building groaned in response to my footsteps. Every echo felt alive, almost sentient. I passed the break room, the bathrooms, and the little exhibit hall where the maps of the trail hung. Nothing. And yet, when I dared to glance over my shoulder, I swore I saw the corner of the lobby ripple in the darkness, like someone had dropped ink into water. Morning came, and we all huddled around the monitor. I had to see it again. The footage made my stomach drop. The moment I stepped into the lobby, the shadow turned its head toward me. And then it moved. Not like a person, not in any way that made sense. The shape stretched, bending across the floor and walls, seeping into the corners like liquid. It flowed and warped, yet stayed distinctly upright, like a figure draped in a black tarp soaked in oil. It followed me, inch by inch, not running, not rushing, just spreading. The chief didn't say much. He just deleted the recording, threw the SD card into the shredder, and muttered about old wiring and faulty sensors. But we all knew. We didn't need proof. None of us stayed inside that building after midnight anymore. We'd patrol the exterior if something needed checking, but none of us were brave enough or stupid enough to spend a night alone in there. I can't shake the way it looked at me through the monitor. Not with eyes, because there were none. But the way it watched, like it knew me, like it remembered my face before I even entered the room. That's the thing that haunts me most. It wasn't a mindless shadow, not a ghost in the usual sense. It was aware, calculating, patient, waiting for the hours when humans feel safest in their sleep, when we think the world is ours, because the forest is asleep too. Sometimes, when the wind rustles the pine outside my apartment, I swear I hear the same kind of breathing. I tell myself it's just the old pipes, the thin walls, but my body tenses anyway. It's instinct now. Muscle memory from that night. I've tried to write it off as fatigue, hallucination, a trick of the camera, but I can't. I saw it, felt it, and I know what I saw. The strange part is how it lingers in memory, not in flashes of terror, not in sudden panic. It creeps, it gnaws. I can picture that shape right now if I close my eyes. The way it absorbs the light in the corners, the way it waits without moving, without breathing, without warning. It doesn't follow you in the usual sense. It waits for you to come to it, to stumble into its awareness. And that, I think, is worse. Because you never feel it coming, you're not running from it, you're running into it. I remember the first week after that night, I tried to sleep in the guest cabin they keep near the trailhead. I couldn't. Every creak of the forest outside sounded like someone pacing. Every gust of wind through the cracked window sounded like footsteps circling the building. My flashlight sat on the floor, casting long, trembling shadows, and I swear I could see a figure leaning against the doorway, waiting. But when I blinked, there was nothing. Just the cabin. Just the quiet. Just me, pretending it was nothing. Some of the staff have their own stories. One girl swears she heard whispering while locking the doors. Another claims she saw a figure in the exhibit hall that vanished when she tried to call it out. I don't know if any of them are exaggerating. I don't want to. Once you see that thing, the details don't matter. You don't need to know if it's a spirit, a human, or something else entirely. It doesn't matter because it exists outside the rules we understand. It occupies a space we can't define, and that's terrifying. It's strange how it changes your perception of time. Nights stretch. Moments feel like hours. The hallway I ran down felt endless. I can still hear the echo of my own shoes, the slap of my palms against the wall as I tried to push past fear and adrenaline. And always, the breathing just behind me. Not loud, not frantic, just there. Slow, deliberate. Human enough to unnerve you. Inhuman enough to make you freeze. I've been back to that ridge since then, but only during the day. Sunlight spilling across the lobby makes it seem mundane, almost warm. The maps are colorful. The vending machines hum their soft, monotonous tune. The shadow never appears when the sun is up, but I know it's there, waiting, patient, silent. And I wonder if it only moves when no one is watching, or if it moves constantly, stretching and writhing in ways I can't comprehend. People ask if I think it's dangerous. I don't know. I don't think it has malice, not in the way we understand it. But it's aware, and awareness in something that defies comprehension is enough to make me afraid. Enough to make the hairs on the back of my neck rise even decades later. Enough to make me avoid that visitor center after sunset. I still work security sometimes, though I've switched posts. When I think about telling people what happened, I hesitate. The words feel cheap compared to the reality. You can say shadow or silhouette, but it doesn't capture the oppressive quiet, the way the air feels heavier in its presence, the way the darkness seems to remember you. You can say, I saw a shadow, but what I saw me, and that's not something you recover from. Every so often, I think about going back, seeing if it's still there, still waiting. Part of me wants to confront it, to know. But every time I stand at the edge of the ridge, looking at the visitor center in the twilight, I hear that soft, wet breathing in my head. And I turn away, because I know it hasn't forgotten me, and I know it never will. Even now, when I close my eyes, I can see it. That black void in the middle of the lobby. Watching, patient, stretching across the floor like ink spilled from a jar. Slow, deliberate, impossible. I can't explain why it moves the way it does. I don't think I ever will. And that's the thing that terrifies me most. Some things exist that we cannot understand, and understanding isn't a requirement for them to notice us. I still wake up at night sometimes, thinking about the flicker on the monitor, the way it turned toward me, and how slowly, impossibly, it began to move. The chief deleted the footage, but I can't delete the memory. And maybe that's what it wants most of all, to be remembered. I don't know what it is, or why it's there, or what it wants. I only know that once you see it, once it touches your awareness, a part of you never feels safe again. And for me, that part of me, the part that thought the forest was just trees and shadows, is gone. I've learned to live with the knowledge that somewhere on that ridge in the visitor center nobody dares enter at night. A shadow waits. and I think it's been waiting a long time. I remember the first time I noticed it clearly. Fire Tower Hill had always been my escape, the highest point in our district, rising above the patchwork of valleys and old-growth forest. I'd been climbing that rickety ladder every morning for years, mostly alone, just me and the birds waking up, listening to the hush of the forest as sunlight spilled across the treetops. There's something about that kind of isolation. It makes you feel alive, but also small. Like the trees themselves are watching you, counting your mistakes. I never thought I'd find something that made me fear the place I loved most. It started on a misty morning, the kind where the valleys below are blurred into a gray haze, and the forest smells of damp pine and rot. I trudged up the familiar trail, boots sinking into the soft soil, and when I rounded the last bend before the tower, I stopped cold. At the base of the tower, the earth had been disturbed. A mound, fresh and dark, like it had just been dug the night before. No tools were lying around, no shovel leaning against the tower, nothing. Just a raw hole in the ground, roughly shaped like a coffin. I knelt beside it, brushing the damp soil with my fingers, half expecting some prankster or a lost animal. But the soil was too neatly piled, too deliberate. I stood back, heart hammering, and tried to shake it off. Someone had dug a grave here. But who? And why? I reported it that morning to the forestry team, trying to keep my voice steady, though it shook more than I realized. They promised to check it out. Hours later, when I returned to see if anyone had come, it was gone. The mound was gone. The soil was smooth again, like it had never been touched, perfectly level with the surrounding earth. The foreman laughed, clapping me on the shoulder, calling it a rookie mistake. "Maybe you just imagined it, son. Happens to the best of us." I wanted to believe that. I really did. But deep down, some instinct in me refused to let it go. There was no way I could have imagined the smell, the loose dirt, the way the air had gone cold around it. That night, I didn't sleep well. I kept thinking about the mound, about the impossibility of it just disappearing. I'd half expected a prankster, but there were no cars, no tracks, nothing that could explain it. When I forced myself back to bed, the forest outside my window was alive with whispers. The wind through the trees, the creak of old branches, and somewhere, buried deep beneath that quiet, I could swear I heard scratching. Faint, desperate, urgent. It wasn't the normal forest sounds, not entirely. It was human, or something that sounded like it had once been. The next morning, I didn't go straight to the hill. I told myself I needed time, logic, perspective. But by mid-afternoon, a gnawing curiosity pulled me back. The climb was slow, my stomach tight with unease. I reached the base of the tower just as the sun dropped low, painting the treetops gold, and my stomach turned over. There it was again, the mound, larger than before. The edges were rough, almost ragged, like something had tried to pull itself out of the dirt. I crouched close, hand hovering over the soil, and I swear I heard it. The scrape of fingers, faint but unmistakable. They clawed just beneath the surface, pushing upward, desperate to reach the air. My skin crawled, and I nearly vomited where I stood. I backed away, feeling the oppressive stillness of the forest press down on me. The tower itself felt different that night, like a sentinel holding back something ancient, something patient. I locked the door behind me and tried to rest, but sleep was a stranger. Every shadow in the room stretched unnaturally long, and every creak of the old wood sounded like it carried a warning. I lay there staring at the ceiling, imagining the soil giving way and something dragging itself out. Pale fingers slick with earth, eyes wide with rage or pleading. My mind refused to stop, refused to let me believe I was safe. Dusk came again the following evening. I thought maybe, just maybe, the mound would be gone, or that the scratching had been a trick of my imagination. But when I reached the base, my blood ran cold. A boot print sat beside the mound, heavy and pressed deep into the dirt, as if someone, or something, had climbed out and walked away. I didn't follow it. I didn't need to. The print alone told me enough. This wasn't a joke. It wasn't natural, and it was ongoing. Days passed, and the mound changed. Some mornings it was shallow, barely a dip in the earth. Other times it was filled in, smooth and tidy, like someone had been careful to cover it up. And then, occasionally, it would form again, a long, narrow box shape, soil clawed up along the sides, as though whoever was inside was trying to dig its way free. I stopped reporting it after that. I stopped mentioning it to anyone. The laughter of the foresters, the dismissive comments, I didn't want to hear them. There was no reasoning with this. No explanation that could make it less real. I tried everything to ignore it. I avoided the hill, avoided the trail that led me to the tower. I told myself it was safer that way. But safety is a lie when you know something is alive beneath your feet, something that isn't waiting for you. It's waiting for itself. I can still see it in my mind. The uneven mound of dirt, the jagged scratches along its sides, the heavy depression of the boot print. I can feel the weight of it pressing down through the soil, through the forest, through me. One night, long after I'd stopped climbing, I woke to a sound I couldn't place. It was outside my window, low and wet, a dragging sound, as if something heavy was moving over roots and rocks. I froze, listening. It didn't belong to the wind. It didn't belong to any animal I knew. My mind tried to rationalize it. Deer, perhaps, or a stray dog. But the dragging stopped abruptly, just beyond the edge of my property, and then nothing. Silence. Absolute silence. I lay in bed trembling, imagining the mound at the tower, imagining hands pushing against the soil, imagining eyes opening for the first time in months, maybe years, desperate for sunlight. I've tried to convince myself it's just the forest playing tricks on me. I've tried to say it's the work of some prankster, or that my memory is twisting with fear. But I've seen the proof. The mound returns, it shifts, it grows, it bears the marks of struggle. And every time I picture it, I feel the same primal dread I felt the first time I saw it. There is something beneath that soil that is not meant to stay buried, something that refuses to remain hidden. I stopped climbing Fire Tower Hill. I stopped going near it entirely. I can't bear the thought of seeing it rise, of watching whatever is trying to free itself finally succeed. I don't want to imagine its hands breaking the surface, wet earth clinging to long, thin fingers, eyes wide with a mixture of terror and rage. I can still feel the pull of that place, the way it calls to you, the way it makes your skin crawl even when you're miles away. Sometimes, late at night, I think about going back. Part of me wants to see the mound, to understand it, to confirm that I'm not losing my mind. But every time, I stop. I know that if I ever climb that hill again, if I ever approach the base of the tower, I might see more than soil. I might see something that doesn't belong in this world, something that's been waiting for someone to notice it, waiting for someone to witness it. And I don't think I could live with that. The mound is still there. I hear it in my dreams, faintly, scraping against the surface, shifting, always moving. It changes with the days, sometimes shallow, sometimes deep, sometimes shaped like a long, impossible box. Whoever, or whatever, is inside isn't dead. It's alive, and it wants out. I don't know if it's trying to bury itself or dig its way free, but I know one thing. I will never go back to Fire Tower Hill. I will never climb that ladder again. I can't, and I hope every day that I never see what finally rises from that disturbed earth. Even now, I can't shake the feeling that it's watching, waiting for the moment I let my guard down. That the soil, the forest, the wind, all of it is patient. And if I ever return, I fear it won't wait any longer. The forest still sleeps beneath the sun. The valleys still stretch far and wide. But Fire Tower Hill keeps its secret, and I keep mine. And I know somewhere under that mound, something is alive, moving and thinking, waiting for the day it finally sees daylight.